Sam Miller, a former chair of the commission, and we have a couple of absences today of the chair and vice chair, so they've asked me to run the meeting. I will acknowledge that we have a quorum present, and our first item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes held on the meeting of December 9th, 2022. These minutes have been circulated among commission members, and so I would entertain a motion to either approve or disapprove of the minutes.
Move to adopt the minutes of the December 9th, 2022 commission meeting as circulated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, actually, Debbie likes us to raise our hand. So raise our hand. All right. Our next item is a report from the ADM Director, Mr. LaFleur.
Good morning, Commissioners. I would like to take a moment just to, on behalf of the department and all of our personnel, extend our condolences to Ms. Merritt, one of our commission members whose husband passed away recently, and she is unable to be here today because of that. But I know I add our condolences along with the rest of the commission expressing their condolences. Let's see if I got any room here. All right. Welcome to all of you to this third meeting of the Alabama Environmental Management Commission for fiscal year 2023. It's my practice to periodically report on the state of the environment in Alabama to see if our efforts have resulted in measurable improvements to the environment in our state. Today's report will update you on the latest information concerning the condition of Alabama's environment. There will also be an update on the department's significant work to fund upgrades to water and sewer systems throughout the state. Finally, I will give you an update on the vegetative waste fire near the city of Moody. It had also been my intention to give you a progress report on the construction of the desperately needed new field office and laboratory in Mobile, but with the very full agenda today, I will defer that report until the April Commission meeting. The department seeks to measure its results in many ways. At the October Commission meeting, performance against the annual operating plan was analyzed. At the Commission meeting in April, we will do the annual review of the EPA-generated quantitative compliance and enforcement metrics comparing all states. We will also provide the results of the State Review Framework Audit performed by EPA every 3 years. Today, we will look at the state of the environment in Alabama to see if efforts have actually resulted in a measurably better quality environment in Alabama. The last report on the state of the environment was in June of 2021. The state of the environment takes the longer view and compares the quality of the state of Alabama's environment when reliable records were first became available some 20 to 30 years ago versus where it is now to see if Alabama's environment is improving. The following series of slides will show the comparison for air, water, and land media. Unlike the quantitative performance metrics available from EPA, comparable environmental quality data from other states is not available. We begin with air data. There are 6 basic air quality standards: fine particles, ozone, oxides of nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and lead. There is also a regional haze goal. Over time, most of the standards have been revised as shown on this slide, each time becoming more stringent. Fine particles and ozone standards have seen 4 revisions since the Clean Air Act was enacted in 1971, while others have been more stable. EPA has proposed another revision to the fine particles standard that will once again make it more stringent. In 2008, EPA set the 2018 goal for total reductions in haze. As this next slide shows, one by one, Alabama has been able to attain individual air quality standards statewide, even as the standards have become tighter. Fine particles standard was first met in 2013, followed by ozone in 2014, and the NOx standard was first met back in 1971, SO2 in 1977, carbon monoxide in 1971, and lead in 2015. In 2015, for the first time since the Clean Air Act was enacted in 1971, the state of Alabama reached attainment for all air quality standards. In addition, ALM has met the 2018 regional haze goal in 2013, 5 years early. This graph shows air emissions from major sources in Alabama have declined materially since 1990, and improvement continues even after those ever more stringent air quality standards were attained. The trend of declining emissions, last reported on the state of the environment in Alabama in June of 2021, continues. The air in Alabama is much cleaner than it was in 1990. In the water media, we will look at drinking water data first because of its importance in that it directly impacts every individual in Alabama. Potential contaminants in drinking water fall into 4 categories: organic chemicals, inorganic chemicals, radionuclides, and microbes. In 1982, when the department was created, there were 23 drinking water contaminants regulated. That number is currently 89, as it has been for several years, with most of the increase being in the organic chemicals category. We do expect an increase in the number of drinking water contaminants regulated in the future as a result of anticipated development of federally mandated maximum contaminant levels for per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. We are obviously regulating more potential contaminants in drinking water. With more contaminants to monitor, how well are the water systems doing? In 1982, 82% of the water systems in Alabama were consistently in compliance with the standards for the 23 regulated contaminants. Today, 98% of the water systems in Alabama are continuously in compliance with the health-based standards for the 89 contaminants now regulated. This is the same as it was in 2021. As I've noted in the past, only the state of Hawaii has had lower number of drinking water violations than here in Alabama. The people of Alabama can have great confidence in the quality of their drinking water. Another measure of water quality looks at the impairments to surface waters in the state. Section 303D of the Clean Water Act calls for a listing of impaired water bodies, which are those not meeting federally approved water quality standards for various pollutants such as nutrients, pathogens, metals, and suspended solids. This chart couples both the area of impairments and the number of pollutants. For example, if 1 mile of stream or 1 acre of surface water is impaired for nutrients and pathogens, that would be counted as 2 combination miles of impaired stream or 2 combination acres of surface water. 25% of the 59,000 miles of perennial streams and rivers and 93% of the more than 1 million acres of lakes, reservoirs, ocean, and estuaries in the state have now been fully assessed for impairment. Over the years, as more water bodies have been assessed, more impairments have been identified and listed. During the period between 1998 and 2022, more than 13,000 combination miles of impaired rivers and streams were identified and added to the 303D list. In 2022, there remained about 4,500 combination miles of impaired rivers and streams as a result of 9,000 combination miles being removed from the list due to improved water quality or being addressed through the development of a total maximum daily load, or TMDL, determination. A TMDL sets strict limits for the discharge of pollutants into the assessed water body that will bring that water body into compliance with water quality standards. This data reflects the removal of 340 combination miles from what was reported back in 2021. During the period from 1998 through 2022, more than 1.1 million combination acres of impaired lakes, reservoirs, ocean, and estuaries were added to the 303D list when identified. In 2022, there remained about 660,000 combination acres of impaired lakes, reservoirs, ocean, and estuaries as a result of more than 450,000 combination acres being removed from the list due to improved water quality or being addressed by TMDL development. As with rivers and streams, this shows continued improvement since our last report. Overall, impaired water bodies have seen significant improvement over the years, and that improvement continues. The 303D list identifies impaired water bodies. Water bodies are also tracked by an assigned designation or use classification. The data in this slide will go back to 1982, which is a bit further back than the previous slide. Looking at the three highest classifications and designations, Outstanding National Resource Waters, Outstanding Alabama Waters, and Treasured Alabama Lakes, as you can see, in 1982, no state waters were yet determined to have met the requirements to be designated in the highest categories. By 2022, Alabama was recognized to have a total of more than 1,100 miles and nearly 5,600 acres in the two combined designations of natural waters of outstanding quality that are considered important to Alabama and the nation. Alabama also had more than 40,000 acres of exceptionally high quality waters resulting from the man-made impoundment of water courses into reservoirs with the Treasured Alabama Lakes designation. Conversely, at the other end of the scale, the number of miles of water courses in the lowest use classifications, which is below the fish and wildlife classification and suitable only for industrial and agricultural use, has declined from more than 700 miles to just over 100 miles. Since 1982, Alabama has seen dramatic increases in waters qualifying for the highest quality designations and use classifications, and likewise dramatic decrease in those falling into the lowest classifications. As measured by drinking water quality, impaired water bodies, and water body designations and use classifications, water quality in Alabama is exceptionally good and continues to improve. Moving on to data from the land media, we begin by looking at landfills. Landfills are a necessary feature if we are to dispose of solid waste generated by each of us in a safe, efficient, and effective manner. In 1989, Alabama had 141 unlined municipal solid waste landfills. All of those have been closed, and today there are 30 state-of-the-art lined MSW permitted landfills handling all the municipal waste, solid waste in Alabama. The number of operating landfills is down 2 from 2021. Alabama, like other states, has had to deal with not only permitted landfills, but also with unauthorized solid waste dumps. Since 2009, more than 2,200 unauthorized solid waste dumps have been remediated. This is up 9.9% over 2021. More than 1,600 of those have been remediated by actions against responsible parties, while nearly 600, representing innocent landowners, have been cleaned up using funds provided by the $1 a ton fee on solid waste disposed of in landfills, which was initiated in 2009. The responsible party number is up by 12.8%, and the innocent landowner number is up by 2.5% compared to 2021. In addition to safely disposing of solid waste, efforts have been expanding to reduce the total amount of solid waste in Alabama by promoting recycling. Once again, significant progress has been made since our last report in 2021, just as it has been in prior years. The solid waste reduction rate in Alabama today is more than 5 times what it was in 1989 and has now surpassed the 25% recycling goal set back in 1991, and this compares favorably with national averages. The total recycling volume now comes to 3.9 million tons per year, a whopping 56% increase since 2021. A robust recycling grant program administered by ADEM since 2010 has provided more than $24 million in grants to help achieve this success. Scrap tires present special problems as fire hazards and breeding grounds for vectors. Since 2006, 370 illegal scrap tire dumps containing 11 million tires have been cleaned up. The number of scrap tire dumps cleaned up is up 3%. Today, solid waste in Alabama's environment is being dealt with responsibly. In the past, underground storage tanks typically found at gas stations have been subject to leaks due to corrosion or physical damage. Leaking petroleum products contaminate both soil and groundwater. New regulations and technology now prevent or provide for early detection of leaks from tanks installed in recent years, but many legacy sites exist in Alabama and throughout the nation. Since 1989, more than 12,000 leak sites have been identified in Alabama. More than 11,000, or 93%, which is up from 2021, have been cleaned up, with the remaining 872 in some stage of the cleanup process. Groundwater contamination from underground storage tanks continues to decline. This final State of the Environment slide shows what has been happening with other contaminated legacy sites known as brownfields. Those most often are old industrial sites. As with underground storage tanks, new regulatory programs and technology have all but halted the creation of new brownfield sites. The Brownfield Program has identified 661 legacy brownfield sites in Alabama. Since 2001, 444, or two-thirds of those sites, totaling 6,400 acres, have been returned to productive use. That is a 3% increase in the number of sites returned to productive use and a 7% increase in the acreage returned to productive use since 2021. 91 of the remaining sites, totaling more than 8,100 acres, are actively enrolled in the Brownfields program. Work continues to identify, enroll, and clean up brownfield sites. The land returned to productive use is very often in prime areas for future industrial development. Both the environment and the economic prospects in Alabama have been improved since 2001 because of this program. The quality of Alabama's environment, as measured by air emissions, meeting or beating water quality standards, and remediated legacy soil contamination, has been improving continuously over the years, and it has continued that improvement since we last reviewed the data. Hard data suggests the progress. Results are what we look for. This report is a look back at some of the highlights and achievements, and is a commitment to continue the work in the future. The state of the environment in Alabama is much improved over what it was 20 to 30 years ago. It is improved over what it was in 2021. Our citizens breathe much cleaner air, have higher quality water, and can be assured that solid waste management and contaminated land remediation have significantly progressed. The current state of the environment in Alabama is very good, and overall trends are favorable. Now, the department regulates 35,000 facilities in Alabama. Occasionally, some of those 35,000 regulated facilities, as well as entities not subject to ADEM regulation, encounter problems that result in adverse environmental impacts. This is the case in every state in the nation. Those affected by such events clearly have reason to be concerned. The department undertakes enforcement when warranted and works with other federal, state, and local governmental organizations as necessary to undertake corrective measures. In a few moments, I'll report on an event of great concern, especially to those near the city of Moody. Unwelcome as individual events causing great concern may be, this report on the state of the environment looks at the entire state of Alabama over time, that also factors in the various violations of environmental regulations that may occur. Improving the environment requires many actions, including statutory activities, regulatory oversight, commitment to cooperative efforts, and investment in infrastructure. For many years, the one action lagging has been investments in infrastructure. In particular, inadequate investments in public water and sewer infrastructure have resulted in increasing environmental problems. For more than 30 years, ADEM has administered the State Revolving Funds Program. It makes low-interest loans to upgrade water and sewer systems. Those systems unable to afford to pay back loans are able to qualify for modest loan forgiveness, but due to limited available funds, many systems have been unable to undertake needed upgrades. The state of Alabama received $2.1 billion in American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funds in 2022. In 2022, the legislature, in conjunction with Governor Ivey, allocated $225 million for grants to upgrade water and sewer systems based on need. ADEM was tasked with identifying the systems with the greatest needs, soliciting improvement projects, analyzing and prioritizing those projects, and administering the expenditure of those funds. Also in 2022, ADEM received $127 million as the first of 5 years of installments under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law directly from EPA to upgrade water and sewer systems in Alabama through grants and loans. The commitment of these funds was also prioritized on need. The department made financial commitments from the ARPA, BIL, and normal state revolving funds to water and sewer upgrades for the entire $463 million available in 2022. The total dollars of projects requested was approximately $3 billion. ADEM made project commitments in 63 of the 67 counties in Alabama. That total represents more than 4 times the volume ADEM administers in a normal year. The dramatically increased workload was borne with no additional personnel. It is a testament to the hard work and dedication of our personnel. An increased workload will continue for at least the next 4 years. Finally, the situation in Moody is on all of our minds, so let's discuss that now. First, I want to express our sincere empathy and concern for those who have had their lives upended by the fire at the vegetative waste disposal site near Moody. We know many have been affected by the smoke. Some have had to temporarily move to avoid exposure. We have heard people's frustrations, and we share them. From the beginning, we recognize the best way to protect their health and safety is to put out the fire and thus eliminate the smoke as quickly as possible. To that end, from the moment the fire was first reported to us, ADEM has been actively involved in efforts to extinguish the fire. ADEM immediately engaged with the Moody Fire Department, the Alabama Forestry Commission, the St. Clair County Commission, the State Emergency Management Agency, the St. Clair County Emergency Management Agency, and others. Unfortunately, none of us has the resources or ability to extinguish an underground fire of this nature. We also reached out to EPA to ask for assistance. Because the fire involved vegetative materials not subject to either state or federal regulations, the EPA said at the time that it lacked authority to take action. ADEM persisted, however, and asked the EPA to deploy its advanced air monitoring units to clearly determine the level of risks that smoke from the fire posed to the public. The EPA agreed, and its tests found the presence of 4 chemicals above the accepted minimal risk level on the fire site itself and 2 of the chemicals above the accepted minimal risk level off-site at a single home about 300 feet from the fire. As unwelcome as that finding was, it did allow ADEM to then ask EPA to take the lead in extinguishing the fire. Unlike state or local agencies, EPA does have resources and contractors on retainer with the experience and expertise to tackle an underground fire like this one. The EPA agreed, and work to put out the fire began on January 19. Work is proceeding well. Smoke from the fire has been greatly reduced. EPA expects the fire to be out in a matter of weeks, perhaps sooner. We want the public to know that ADEM personnel are on the site every day. We are providing regular updates to the public at moodyfireupdate.com, all one word. In addition to the air monitoring at the 6 nearby stationary monitors and the EPA mobile air monitors, the department is monitoring water quality. Test results show the fire does not appear to be having any discernible effect on water quality. We will continue to monitor water quality and report our findings along with air monitoring results. As we have stated before, ADEM will investigate and take appropriate enforcement action against the site operator after the fire is out. This fire is an extraordinary event. It exposed shortcomings in the ability and authority of state and local governments to respond to situations that are outside the scope of regulated activities, but nonetheless pose risks to the public. We are in talks with representatives of county governments and other agencies about ways to close these gaps. Our goal, as always, is to protect the health and safety of our citizens and the environment, and to make sure we have the tools and authority to do so. We must work together and do all we can to ensure an incident like this does not happen again. That completes today's report. I'll be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the commission, Director
Thank you, Commissioner.
There is no report today from the commission chair. Is there any other business that anyone on the commission is aware of that we should talk about or discuss today? Our next scheduled meeting is April 14th, 2023. Is there anybody that has a conflict that they know of at this point with that date? Well, our plan would be then to meet on April 14th, 2023. Our next item is the public comment period, and we have 3 requests to make presentations. One from GASP, from Michael Hanson, Jaleesa Milton, and Sydney Elise Smith. One from Mr. David Lutter, from the Environmental Defense Alliance. And a third request from Councilor McKay, is that Livers or Livers?
You got it correct, Livers. Yes, sir.
Well, anyway, he's from Morris, Alabama, and he has made a request to discuss a chicken litter problem as he's described. Now, we have 3 requests with a 10-minute period, and at this point, we have to either move to approve these requests, deny the requests, or table the presentations. Do I have a motion for one of those 3?
So moved
So moved that we,
to have the presentation.
all right. Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of allowing the request to move forward, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, same sign. Now, before we get started with these requests, I wanted to point out something in our statute 335-2-3.05. And what this says is that we encourage public participation, such as we're going to hear today, for reasons of fairness and due process to the parties, both sides of the question. We are specifically discouraged from engaging in non-deliberative discussion of any of the matters that are subject to the litigation. So as I read that, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong here, we will simply listen to the presentations, but we probably should avoid making any response to these proposals. So I'm just telling you that's the way I read the rule. It's up to you if you want to continue to follow that rule. All right, so our first request is from GASP, from Michael Hanson, Jalissa Milton, and Sydney Elise Smith. Now, all the GASP members, I'm sure, since they've been here many times, are aware we have a 10-minute time limit for these presentations. That is a cumulative 10 minutes, not 10 minutes for each of the 3 people.
It's just me talking.
Okay, just want to make sure we're all on the same page. All right, and you are,
Sydney Elise Smith.
you are Miss Sydney Elise Smith. Well, welcome and proceed.
All right. Well, good morning or afternoon, everyone. So this presentation is moving forward from the fire. It is just myself talking today. So GAS is the Greater Birmingham Alliance to Stop Pollution.
Hold on one second. Is there any way we can increase her volume? I'm having a really hard time hearing her. Or maybe just move closer to the microphone.
Okay, there we go. GAS is the Greater Birmingham Alliance to Stop Pollution. Our mission is to advance healthy air and environmental justice in the Greater Birmingham area through education, advocacy, and collaboration. Our vision, we envision a healthy, just, and sustainable Alabama for everyone who lives, works, learns, and worships here. And we strive to reduce air pollution, to educate the public on the health risks associated with poor air quality, and to encourage community leaders to serve as role models for clean air and clean energy development. So these are just a few of the acronyms I'll be using in this presentation. The most important ones are ADEM, AEMC for the Commission, and Environmental Landfill Incorporated as ELI. The rest are important as well, but those are the major ones. You all see what the presentation is about in the guide, so I won't belabor that. So about ADEM, in the Alabama Code of 1975 and Title 22, this is where the department was created under that particular law, so it's authorized by the state. Specifically in Section 22-22-A-4 on subsection N, I wanted to read that one out loud. It says that the department is hereby designated as the State Environmental Control Agency for the purposes of federal environmental law. Specifically, the department is designated as the State Air Pollution Control Agency for the purposes of the Clean Air Act, as the State Water Pollution Control Agency for the purposes of the Federal Clean Water Act, the state agency responsible for the promulgation and enforcement of drinking water regulations in accordance with the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act. Also responsible for the promulgation and enforcement of solid and hazardous waste regulations. Okay, sure. Regulations, and authorized to take all necessary and appropriate actions to secure to this state the benefits of federal environmental laws. ADEM's mission is to assure for all citizens of the state a safe, healthful, and productive environment. Under Alabama Code 1975, Section 22-22A, subsection 6, and it's also reflected in ADEM's administrative code, we see the Commission's authority as well, which they are to select a director and advise the director, to establish, adopt, promulgate, modify, repeal, and suspend any rules, regulations, or environmental standards for the department, to develop environmental policy, and to hear and determine appeals for administrative actions. My focus is on the first three powers of the Commission. So just to address some failures, I'm going to go through a quick timeline. I won't read them, but I went through ADEM's e-file for ELI, which is the Environmental Landfill Incorporation, which is the location of where this Moody landfill fire is taking place. You all will see, dating back to January of 2013, there was a record of complaint filed that was closed a couple of months later. There was no further action taken after it was investigated. Throughout these different notices of violations and site investigation memos, you'll see descriptions talking about it being an unauthorized dump, that the landowner is not innocent. It was marked as a fire hazard potential on several occasions. You'll see where the inspector marked waste descriptions as construction demolition waste, household waste, scrap tires, etc. And that goes on. We're in 2017. It's still some of the same things. They come out, they investigate. They still determine that the landfill is responsible for being an unauthorized dump. Several correspondences, several memos still. We're in 2023, we got the EPA sampling report where they revealed that there were chemicals identified that exceeded certain levels where removal action may be triggered. We know that they're working on everything, and the most recent document in the e-file is a letter from ADEM to the landowner requiring the operator to provide certain documents of certain transactions that have taken place with the landfill. So with the Moody landfill fire timeline, we know that this was reported on Friday, November 25th, back in 2022. And to date, as you heard earlier, they are making efforts to extinguish the fire. That is a top priority. As an air pollution regulation organization, we are concerned with the lasting impacts beyond extinguishing the fire. That is a public health concern. So going back to the failures, It is our assertion that ADEM failed to regulate. While we understand that ADEM claims it had no authority over ELI because the landfill is not regulated, there should have been rules in place for when a green waste landfill poses or presents as a regulated landfill due to noncompliance, abuse of leniency, etc. ADEM also failed to enforce. ELI's track record in the ADEM e-file demonstrates multiple notices of violations, indications of fire hazards, indication of non-innocent landowner, and demonstration of the presence of regulated waste in their landfill. One of the memos dated on August 10th, and that's in the presentation as well, was an 18-month opportunity for the owner to rectify the situations, the different debris that was out there. And that was the most recent documentation prior to the land fire starting. It is also our assertion that ADEM failed to enforce. So while ADEM claimed no authority for land matters, ADEM is still responsible for the air under the authority mentioned earlier. This is copied directly from your website. The Air Division also administers the delegable provisions of the Clean Air Act, the federal law that regulates air emissions from stationary and mobile sources. The Air Division has primary jurisdiction over all air emission sources within the state, except for those emission sources located within Jefferson County or the city of Huntsville. So in ADEM's admin code under Regulation 335-3-2, .02 QQQ, source shall mean any building, structure, or facility, installation, article, machine, equipment, device, or other contrivance which emits or may emit any air contaminant. Any activity which utilizes abrasives or chemicals for cleaning or any other purpose, such as cleaning the exterior of buildings which emits air contaminant, shall be considered a source. There is case law that makes it okay to look at the dictionary definition if it does not exist in the law. So facility by dictionary definition is something such as a hospital that is built, installed, or established to serve a particular purpose. So based on this definition, ELI is the facility established to accept and dispose of natural waste, and under ADEM's definition of source, ELI is a source that emits or may emit any air contaminant. So it's also our assertion that ADEM failed to respond. ELI is still an emissions air source regardless of its claimed status as a facility with unregulated materials. Therefore, ADEM failed to declare a chapter air pollution emergency under the code. We provided data as GASP, and the EPA recently provided data, and there was no action from ADEM. The AMC failed to advise, so ADEM was not properly advised by the Commission on how or what to do to effectively regulate ELI in the past 5 or so years, nor how to directly handle this Moody landfill fire situation. And our final assertion is that the Commission failed to advise. The statements that ADEM has no authority to regulate green waste is inaccurate, and the Commission failed to advise accordingly. So our proposal in Proposal 1, in the Commission's advisory capacity, you need to direct ADEM to regulate green waste as it is part of the definition of solid waste, and you can find that in the applicable code. Proposal 2, in its advisory capacity, the Commission needs to direct the department to create an action plan to tackle emergencies like this in the future. Again, regulation is only part of the strategy for efficient landfill operations like ELI, and that's the applicable code. Proposal 3, that's a typo. It should say ADEM. So ADEM needs to include organizations like GASP, who are representative of the community, to contribute to pending discussions and planning of certain environmental rules, regulations, and laws, along with the Commission's attorney, engineer, scientist, and remainder of the Commission, and that's pursuant to that code. The department does have the authority to do so. Our rationale for our proposals is to promote an effort to eliminate illegal and/or improper waste disposal, an opportunity to fix the gaps in the law concerning a specific type of waste, to strengthen designated authorities charged with environmental management and protection matters in the areas of regulation, management, and enforcement, and to prevent future public health and environmental disasters and emergencies, to prevent future threats to public health, safety, and the environment in this capacity. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Is there a response from the department?
If I could just make a couple of points. The air emissions she's referring to are a result of the fire, not of the regulated status of the landfill, of the waste disposal site, vegetative waste disposal site. So when a fire does occur, we do take enforcement action and are authorized to take that action, which is what we're doing in this case. As far as the proposal to change the rule to cover vegetative waste, I believe that the attorneys will be responding to the next presentation, that will likely require legislation as opposed to regulatory action, rulemaking to accomplish that. There are a number of proposals that are put out on the table, and we will certainly work with them to discuss those proposals. But they currently do have the opportunity, as all citizens and organizations do, to comment on any proposed regulations that the Commission may be considering. They have the opportunity to propose rules for the Commission to consider, and they have the opportunity, like all citizens do, to lobby the legislature to undertake any legislation that may be required. So we certainly support those opportunities that they do have, as all citizens and organizations do. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them, but we will address these in more detail. I was very pleased to see that she was making extensive use of our e-file system. We are among the most transparent systems or agencies in the state for sure, and in the nation, where all of this documentation is readily available to anybody who may wish to have it, and does not require a lengthy process to get those documents. They can find whatever they're looking for in there. But thank you for using that. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I have a couple of things I'd like to say, but based on my reading of the rules, I'm not supposed to, so I'm not going to. All right. Now we have Mr. David Lutter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Good morning. I am David Lutter, attorney for the Environmental Defense Alliance. I sent you a rather long letter, I guess, on January 26, describing this presentation. The basic point of the presentation was to establish that, in my opinion, the department has sufficient statutory authority today to have regulated the environmental landfill site as well as other green waste disposal sites. And what I'd like to do is just very briefly summarize how I get to that conclusion. I think,
Arrow to the right.
yeah.
Well, where's our IT expert? Please come help.
Maybe I got it upside down. There you go.
Okay.
First off, this provision in the Code of Alabama says that solid waste shall be disposed according to requirements of this article and the rules of the department, and shall be disposed of in a permitted landfill. Of course, the environmental landfill Inc. site was not a permitted landfill. So the question is, what is solid waste? Does it include green waste? Well, the statute defines solid waste, as including any other discarded materials. The statute does not define what discarded materials are. And when a statute is silent like that, the courts look to dictionary definitions of terms to find out what the ordinary usage of the term is. So the dictionary definition of material and discarded are reflected here. Material is basically any matter, and discarded is any material that has been rejected, cast aside, or abandoned as no longer needed or wanted. So that's probably what the courts would look to, at least in the absence of a statutory definition. Now, in one ADEM rule on the solid waste program, there is a definition of discarded material. It's very much like the dictionary definitions. It's material that is thrown away, abandoned, disposed of, or otherwise given up without the intent to reuse, recycle, or reclaim. Green waste that is put in a landfill is a discarded material. It's not going to be reused or recycled or reclaimed. It's abandoned or disposed of in the landfill. So, stumps, logs, tree limbs, brush, yard trimmings, leaves, and other vegetative debris that is disposed of is a discarded material as defined both in the ADEM rule and in dictionary definitions. Going further, stumps, logs, tree limbs, brush, yard trimmings, leaves, and other vegetative debris, which are, as I said, discarded material and solid waste that is disposed of on land, according to the statute, shall be disposed of in a permitted landfill. So my concern, or the concern of the Environmental Defense Alliance, is probably has less to do with the environmental landfill, Inc. Landfill, because that's in the process of being mitigated. Our concern is really, what about all the other green waste landfills in this state that do not have any protection against fires like occurred at the one in St. Clair County? If you know anything about landfills, municipal solid waste landfills have to be covered daily with some kind of cover. And that cover is intended in part to prevent fires. Not only fires from occurring at the surface, but if the surface catches fire, the layers of cover below that are supposed to prevent fires from progressing downward. Construction and demolition debris landfills also have to be covered periodically. And again, one of its purposes is to prevent fires. So we have an issue with how many landfills are there, green waste landfills are there out there that have no protection against fire. And we think that the department has ample authority to regulate, and you, the commission, has ample authority to adopt rules governing the regulation of these type landfills. Now, on January 19th, I submitted a public records request to the department to try to learn how many landfills like this do we know exist in Alabama. I'm still waiting on an answer, but that's obviously one of the first things that has to be determined. How many are out there? Some other things that we have suggested in our letter are that there ought to be an immediate inspection of these landfills by ADEM to determine whether or not they present any risk to the environment presently. At some point, we need to determine whether any cover has been included in these landfills. And then we need to go on further and begin a regulation process to make sure that the same kind of fire that happened up in St. Clair County doesn't occur elsewhere. It's a risk. It's a risk that has been demonstrated to exist, and we ought not to ignore it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Is there a response from the
There is, Dr. Miller.
May it please the Commission, my name is Chris Sasser. I'm with the Office of General Counsel. I'll be brief, just 3 points. First, from the definition of solid waste, the legislature excludes waste from silvicultural operations. That's in that big long definition that was put up there just a few minutes ago. Silviculture means growing and cultivation of trees. And that's from the Google English Online Dictionary that's published, that's provided by the Oxford Publishers. Waste from those operations would, of course, be limbs, logs, stumps, and associated vegetation. And even if this definition is a little more narrow, that is, it means only some kinds of tree cultivation, there's no practical way to tell where this waste comes from once it's disposed. A limb is a limb is a limb. And so also there's no rational basis to treat this kind of waste from different places differently. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sassen. All right, our third request is from McKay Loppers.
Yes, sir.
From Morris. Welcome, McKay. I'm just going to go first.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We're glad you're here.
Okay, perfect.
You have 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll introduce myself, McKay Livers. I am a city council member in this little small town of Morris, Alabama, which is in northern Jefferson County. Recently kind of ran across a situation that at first was did not really think much of it. Then after kind of doing a little bit further reading and kind of really looking into it a little bit more, I realized, to be quite honest with you, I found out that this situation has been in front of you prior, which is kind of the spreading of beneficial use for agricultural purpose, chicken skimmings and chicken sludge. There's many names out there for it. What I kind of wanted to do is just kind of recap very quickly kind of what happened in our town, and then just kind of bring it to your attention and make a couple of requests potentially. So Morris, Alabama, North Jefferson County is about 18 miles north of downtown Birmingham, so kind of at the northern point there. But about September, October, we noticed that multiple, and when I say multiple, probably 10 plus would be a pretty safe, conservative number, 10 plus tanker trucks traversing through our town limits, going just on the outskirts of town, and then later find out actually operating within our city limits. I'll discuss that in a minute. Trying to figure out what was going on. That was followed shortly thereafter by a faint odor, and then that culminated with a couple of situations on a spread of about a week where the odor was literally unbearable to the point where residents within the area, we started fielding multiple complaints and had no idea what was going on. So kind of the request is just kind of some ideas and things that I kind of thought of that might be beneficial and help with that, is just to basically right now, from what I have observed, and I could be incorrect, so please understand that, but from what I've observed, there's a minimum standard, and that minimum footage distance does not vary based on the location. And so kind of one of my requests is just to kind of take a little bit more consideration into the locale based on potentially population density and also the route traveled, I think is important to kind of note. Secondly, just kind of requiring also a little bit of additional notification to the local government entities, including with these operations being a financial situation, not to the end user, but including potentially requesting that the proper local governmental business licenses and those kind of things be acquired, because that gives us an opportunity for some sort of a rebuttal, basically. So I just wanted to kind of point out, this is kind of the location of Morris on the screen. The operations here, there's a little faint red line, you can't see it very well. The operations occurred there in that location, and then heading to the left of the screen there, continued along those fields. As you can kind of see Morris, Alabama, we are small, but we have a fairly large population density in the area, as well as most of Jefferson County does. So I'll just point out a few locations. As you can see, there's the city. I wanted to kind of just, I don't think I've got a pointer on here, but kind of the operation is in the southern part of the screen there. As you can see here, we've got a pretty small little downtown area, but those areas, those vehicles were traveling daily. From what I understand, the operation is still active. I requested whether or not to find out whether this was, and I did not get a response. I asked a couple of times on that, and so I believe it is still, from what I understand, an active site based on using the e-file system as well. So first request is just requesting some new requirements, just kind of taking a secondary look and just kind of a little bit more extensive look before permitting these operations. From what I'm understanding, and I'm sure I'm a little incorrect on this, so please feel free to correct me on some of these things, but it seems to be, from what I'm being able to see, is you're given a list and of the operations, and as long as it's within those minimum footages, it's permitted. I'll kind of point out a couple of things on this, and then I'll kind of go into the secondary request. As you can see, this is just the 2010 Census Bureau. This is the most up-to-date. I tried to find some additional state maps, but you can see the population densities here. With us having 3.3 square miles, we've got approximately 2,300 residents, I believe, or I did the math, 2,350. It's about 712 residents per square mile. In my opinion, and it only is obviously my opinion, is that is way too large of a population density for these operations. If you've ever had an opportunity to experience it when it's in a full bore operation, it really shouldn't occur. Give you an example, just give you a couple of homes, and this came directly from the footage has come off the inspection reports on the e-file. So storage and land applications less than 500 feet from an inhabited building, less than 100 feet from water surfaces, storage and land applications less than 100 feet from property boundaries. That's all I could find as far as some minimum requirements. If it meets those, from what I'm understanding, it's potentially permitted. I'll just kind of point out a couple of locations there. That home right there, we received phone calls on. It's 921 feet. I just tried to be conservative in my estimates, and just using some Google Earth measurements. 921 feet. That is actually my sister's home, which is approximately 1,900 feet. Sister and brother-in-law could not go outside. 2 small children. When these are in full bore operations, you cannot be outside. It is unbearable. My daughter, when I got the phone call, she and I jumped in the car, rode down the road, rolled the windows down, started gagging. It's pretty horrible. I just don't believe that this is an operation that needs to be occurring this close to a city. Another location here is our new park. We've got a new children's park, so that's estimated 1,900 feet away. If this operation is still permitted within this area, that is impacted also. We've been up there because it's under construction to the point where it's not unbearable in that location, but we can still smell it very strongly. Kind of mentioned too, this is just kind of, I'm going to go back to this in just a minute, but this is also kind of the route that's traversed to get to that particular location as well. That's one of the considerations I think I'd like to be considered as well, is just what is the route and how many people and what's impacted along that route to get to these operations. If a spill were to occur in that location, we're going to be very, very poorly prepared to be able to handle any kind of a situation like that. So that kind of brings me to the second request, to be just for the commission to require any type of operations. Once again, I mentioned to kind of obtain or at least provide some education to the local communities and government entities that would be involved. We should be made aware, at least in some way, shape, or form, that this operation is going to be occurring within our area. Town received multiple complaints. Both of our clerks got daily phone calls for a pretty good little stretch of time, to the point we didn't have any responses. We didn't have any answers until I started making some phone calls and asking some questions. So it's a way to kind of just stop, slow things down a little bit, and potentially provide some education to those local government entities for us to be able to kind of provide a response back. I'm here kind of representing my citizens and protecting my citizens, and particularly my sister and my little nephew. So that's kind of part of it that goes along with it. Any type of operations within a revenue exchange, I spoke with the Jefferson County Revenue Department. We are both in agreement that with this kind of situation, there should be some local business licensing that occurs before these operations are permitted. That didn't occur. I think it would be probably the best thing is before a permit is issued, probably to allow them to come to us, obtain that local business permit, that local business license, and then be permitted from the state and from ADM. So that's kind of part of the second request. During the peak operations, multiple commercial vehicles, like I mentioned, way more than we normally experience. During all days, all times, Saturday, we had a chili cook-off competition brought into town. The entire duration of this chili cook-off right along in our city park, we've got multiple 18-wheelers full of this operations riding through our city. So just kind of to point out a couple of things along the route and why I think it's probably specifically this one, but why it should be considered on all. Route included goes through Town Hall, goes right through our gas station, our brand new Jax. We got a Jax. You know you're moving up when you get a Jax in your town, right? But in all seriousness, we're very thankful for that because it's producing an additional $90,000 a year in revenue for us. Passes right through the Jax, goes right next to Town Hall. The Senior Center, you hang a right, you go in front of your first town park, in front of the police station, in front of the fire station, our community ballpark, our new playground, and then continues on and passes through 3 subdivisions to get 900 to 1,000 feet away from those subdivisions. So that's just my request on that. I just think it's something that just a little bit of additional kind of consideration on that part would be beneficial. So we did confirm, as mentioned, that's just kind of what this shows, that those operations did occur within the city limits. I have read extensively on these operations, and I am not an expert on the environmental impact that they involve, but I'll be quite honest with you, if you ever do experience it in person, you won't forget it. I've been inside of chicken houses. I've been inside of those. It's a completely different kind of situation. So that's really it. Those were kind of the requests and the considerations, and I finished with 20 seconds on the clock, so I did good. I'm proud of myself because I'm long-winded. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Councilman Livers, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
All this is within the city limits you're talking about?
Partly within the city limits, and that property, same owner, part within the city limits, and then part within the county. Yes, sir.
So, do you have any zoning?
Zoned agricultural. So the only thing that we could probably potentially do is specifically outline to disallow. But that again is in the reactive type situation. But yes, sir, absolutely, it is zoned agricultural. And to be quite honest with you too, not to really get into a debate on it, but that operation, there's nothing that occurs on that piece of property. So when the word beneficial use comes in, which is used a lot of times, there's nothing going on there. There's a few cattle, and that's it. It's a grass field. Has been for many, many years. And so that's probably another consideration, maybe for another day. I didn't really include that, but yes, sir.
How big is that tract?
The tract that's within our city limits is not quite as big. I want to say it's the section that was there is 16, 18 acres, and I want to say overall it's pretty significant. It's about 5 times that size completely. So it continues on back, but actually on the back side of the operation starts impacting another city and some other homes. But I just, from looking at the map, there's plenty of other areas and locales that could be used and could be permitted, and this just seems to be a little too close to home from an impact standpoint. So that's kind of why.
The people that are doing this have an ADEM permit to do it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
They do. Yes, sir. They provide reports back on where they're working, their operations, and they're permitted and they're listed on the e-file. You can find them. It might take a week or two to get on there, but yes, sir, they're permitted through ADEM.
Does the ADEM permit limit, density, the amount of this application per acre, or is it open?
Our Land Division Chief Steve Cobb addressed some of the issues that have been
Yes.
brought up here.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
When-
Jumping ahead.
If you all would like to have a response in total, but yes, there is a requirement for a plan for application rates required.
Okay, have you talked to any of these folks from ADEM about this?
Yes, sir. I've made a couple of phone calls. I've got a couple of names that I could provide and try to have some conversations. To be quite honest with you, one of them was actually very helpful in the education process. So I do understand that there is a certain amount that has to be spread on top of the property for nitrogen content that is injected in the soil. So I kind of they were very helpful in that standpoint as far as an education standpoint. But if I'm in a reactive stance and having to do that, I just feel like there should probably be a little bit more, considered as far as the local communities impacted on it. Yes, sir.
Well, keep calling them back.
Yes, sir. I have had some good conversations, and one in particular, to be quite honest with you, I don't know if I need to name names, but she was very, very helpful with her name, Alexis Rogers, and she was very, very helpful in just providing a good education standpoint. But again, the recommendation was made, based on that the considerations for changes had to be made through this. That's why I ended up here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the commission?
Thank you.
for coming. We
Yes, sir.
appreciate your sharing with us today. And we have one other request for a different, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Chairman Miller, Stephen Cobb, Chief of the Land Division. If I could just cover a couple of points regarding this. As you'll recall, the beneficial use regulations were first implemented by the department about 3 years ago. Prior to that, there were no controls on activities of the nature that's been described here. And after the first 2 years of operation of those regulations, we came back to the commission about a year ago with substantial upgrades to those activities. I believe from the presentation that the activity described by Councilor Livers was shortly after those regulations went into effect. We are in a continuing process of evaluating the regulations that we have in situations such as this, and we'll be coming back to the commission as we identify additional changes that need to be made to continue to upgrade those regulations. The department is also funding research to find improved ways for control of odor, pathogens, and other things, because we do recognize the sensitivity of this in communities where it occurs. Councilor Livers mentioned about the concerns about business licenses. Our regulations do not exempt parties from complying with local business license requirements and things such as that. So that is still within the jurisdiction of the local community. And regarding comments about being able to get information, the Land Division will be talking with Councilor Livers to find out specifics and make sure that we're providing the information we need.
Thank you. All right, we have David Butler, who is requesting a 3-minute comment period on Moody landfill.
So my name is David Butler. I am the staff attorney and riverkeeper at Cahaba Riverkeeper. The points that I wanted to talk about today are really larger than the Moody landfill fire or the Alabama oil and gas recovery situation just down the road. First, I want to recognize that we often criticize the department, but we also recognize there are some tremendous employees doing a great job. Our issue really comes, why I'm here today is the issue of enforcement. And so with the environmental landfill situation, as Sydney covered in her presentation, for roughly 10 years, the department warned this facility about problems at the landfill. As recently as August 10th of 2022, the operator of the landfill acknowledged in a visit with ADEM, which is recorded and reflected in the inspection report, that regulated waste remained buried at that site. As it was alluded to in the earlier presentation, he asserted that he had a plan over the next 18 months to clean up that regulated material that was buried there, but clearly acknowledged that it was still there. The department did not take any further action at that point, even though they had documented that the site was a fire hazard. Despite the presentation about the closure of unauthorized dumps, we would assert that prior to this fire, the department viewed that unauthorized dump as being closed. We have demonstrated through water quality testing, through air monitoring, that there are regulated materials burning at that site. And we find it unacceptable that with that knowledge, the department did not request the EPA do air monitoring in November, when it was clear from the Moody Fire Department, from the Forestry Commission, from the Emergency Management Authority, that they could not put out the fire. In discussing with people at the site, they had recognized that they didn't have the resources to do that, and their plan of action was to sit and watch it burn until it extinguished itself. While the residents in the area were being told that only vegetative waste was burning there. The EPA air quality results that were returned in mid-January clearly demonstrated that was not the case. In February of this year, the department sent a notice to the residents in the area that they are monitoring the situation. The people there felt like that every resident that we've talked to that received that notice felt like it was far too late to be useful. In the situation with the Alabama Oil and Recovery business, is an oil aggregator that collected and transported hazardous waste. They have not filled out one piece of paperwork in over 4 years. They have not submitted monitoring reports, certifications, anything. And until this landfill fire, the department had failed to take action to ensure that that site was closed. And so that's two sites within a mile and a half of each other that demonstrate the failure of enforcement. Thank you.
Well, we've had some stimulating discussion today. We, I think, have completed our schedule, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have one?
So moved.
And second? Second. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, same sign. All right, thank you very much.